How's the church doing? Good. How you sinners doing? Great. Doing good too. Okay. My name is Pat G.R.J. Walker. I'm the author of the Sister Betty Gospel Comedy Series. And I want to thank everyone for coming out. Girl, I like your eyebrows. Oh, sorry. I'm also known as a Christian comedian, Sister Betty. And you can go on YouTube, you know, whatever, and find some of my performances, television and otherwise. I started out many years ago in the record industry. Actually, I was an entertainer first, and I sang with a group called the Chantels. And from there, I went into the recording industry where I did promotion and marketing for Epic and Def Jam and Columbia, you know, then I did gospel, S&D records. And one day when I was told that this album that I had produced was being put on the shelf because Columbia had this little girl group they wanted to put on, a little girl group, y'all might have heard of them, called Destiny's Child. I decided, okay, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not cute anymore. My waist ain't 22 inches, you know. Well, it was. I was a baby. Anyhow, I had some little short stories, and a friend of mine who wrote Soul Food for Joyce Berkshire told me, said, well, you know, why don't you put out one of the little funny stories you wrote? So I mentioned being in the recording industry because I was used to doing that, and I knew nothing about the literary industry. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I was putting out an album, I would take a single from the album and I would put it out, right? Y'all buy singles, right? Not knowing any better, I got on my computer and I had written this story many, many years ago called Sister Betty, God's Calling. But this is what it looked like. Looked like a little pamphlet, right? Well, let me tell you how God works. It went into the bookstores with a staple in the middle. Nothing on the spine, because everything that I had learned in the recording industry about how to promote and market, which, by the way, I hated working there because you got to lie a lot. And I was fine line a little, but, you know, they used to take it overboard. But everything that I learned under Russell Simmons and some of the others, I used to put out this little book and promote it. And when I could no longer keep up with the demands, a friend of mine who was an attorney said, well, let me, you know, have some more printed up for you. So this was the second version of it, Sister Betty, God's Calling Again. Now, I might also add that if you go online, you'll see what these were the beginnings of a new genre called gospel comedy, and you can purchase this particular copy for about $1,500. So I will be watching this little plastic bag. So what I'd like to do, because I know I don't have a lot of time, well, from there I got a major publishing deal with Kensington Daphina, and I have been with them ever since. So I just want to read a little bit from the story, Sister Betty, God's Calling You. This time it's God's Calling You Again because they brought up all the short stories that I had and they republished it and put it in a collection. Anybody here from the South? Come on now. All y'all? All right, so then y'all will understand the language. And this is Marcia, who was taking care of two of her grandchildren. She's waiting for Sister Betty to come over. Yes, she did get a phone call. No, she didn't. She did so. No, she did not. Little bit, Junebug, Marcel yelled from the flower-covered front porch. If y'all two youngers don't shut your mouths out there, I'm going to whoop you like you stole something. You hear me? Me and Sister Betty trying to talk about the Lord. And even he can't hear us over the ruckuses y'all two making. Now shut up before I knock you out and pray you back. Junebug was 10 years old. He was caramel candy colored, but not as sweet. He was also kind of short and skinny with a lot of attitude compared to his 10-year-old cousin, Little Bit. Little Bit, on the other hand, looked more like she was 15 than 10. She wasn't chubby, but what the old folks call thick. Her complexion was lighter than Junebug. Little Bit was often called high yellow or mixed. Separately, the two cousins were little angels, but together they could turn old Satan into a punk and make him hang a clothes for today sign on hell's door and hide.
Book clubs have been a very important part of my writing journey. Because like most writers, when I finished my first book, the plan was to publish the book, Oprah calls, I retire, and then I write the rest of my books on the beach. I had no idea of what is involved in this publishing industry. I can go to law school 10 more times and it will not be as hard as trying to survive in this industry. And I mean that. I actually mean that. So you need to have a passion to do what we do up here. Because you got to do it for the love of it. Because it's not for the money, because it's not much money unless you really get out and make it. And it's time consuming, and I've done it while practicing law because it is a passion. So I want my words today to resonate with you no matter what your passion is. Because everybody has a passion. If you don't, you need to find one. Because whether it's your children or your family or jewelry making or whatever it is, find your passion because I think it makes life sweeter. 2014 has been an incredibly good year for me, an incredibly bad year for me. It's been probably one of the most doubly stressful years of my life. Divorce, moving out of a house, moving in with a girlfriend, buying a house, just a lot of turmoil in my personal life, but also the image award. You know, the same night my house finally closed. And if you're trying to sell a house and get a divorce and move out, it's a lot. And I think it was significant from a religious perspective that my house closed and finally sold on the same night that I won the image award. And I like to say that God closed one door and he opened the other. And the fact that I'm just standing here and feeling better now, feeling like I'm almost like back to myself, and I know that God has a different plan for me. And I want the issue of passion. I want to relate a story that and I want to remind you about your passion that you have to dream big. Okay, continue to dream big and continue to work past rejection in your life. In 2008, I had 2 books out. My third book, Murder on a Download, which I thought was my best book to date. Could not find a home. My current publisher rejected it, got a new agent. 8 publishing houses rejected that book. 8 publishing houses, 9 total, rejected Murder on a Download. But I was determined that I was not going to stop writing. But I didn't want to self-publish. I was like, I'm working, I can't have a publishing company, I cannot do all this. And you know, I say God puts people in your life for a reason, because if there was a reason for my husband to be in my life, my ex-husband, it was because, as a result of my writing career. Because after weeks of coming home and seeing me looking sad with, oh, we got another rejection letter, don't worry about it, it's going to happen. And one day he just came, my husband was a plumber. So my husband has a real entrepreneurial spirit, just sort of like he goes for what he wants. And he said, one day he came home, he said, you know what? Forget them those publishers. But he didn't say to forget. There's another one. Forget those plumbers. We gonna self-publish. I'm like, we gonna self-publish? You a plumber? I don't know anything about self-publishing. That's okay. Remember when rap first came out? Nobody gave rap any respect. And now they took over the world. We're gonna do like the rappers do. We're gonna take it to the street. Okay, so now I'm imagining being in, the parking lot at the grocery store with the trunk up. Come over here, buy my book. And so I was like, no, I don't want to self-publish. No, there's no, I wanted the self-esteem. I wanted this book deal. I wanted the prestige of a book deal. And so for the next 3 months, he badgered me. He basically would come home and said, hey, I heard this. Here's this number. I heard somebody on the radio talking about a self-publishing class. You gonna self-publish. And I was still resistant. And then one day it hit me that even if I got a book deal tomorrow, and this book was already written, Murder on a Download was already written, it would probably be 1.5 years, 2 years before I was in stores. Did I have 2 years to have this book sit? So I decided that I would go ahead and self-publish. And I like to say God just ordered my steps. I found somebody to do the print design, and I said I wasn't going to go to one of those vanity houses because I researched it and figured like only how they make money is selling their books to you. So I put together my own thing. I found somebody to do the interior. I found Marion Designs in Atlanta, the best cover designer I think on the planet. And I ended up getting a distribution deal. I was in stores. My self-published book was in Barnes & Noble that first week. I was like just amazed. But my thinking was I still want a book deal. My plan was to self-publish long enough to get a book deal. And I'm still like out there trying to submit it again, got rejection. I wrote another book. Something along the lines changed my focus about self-publishing. It was 2010. I'm home, and I remember being in the bedroom. I was running around doing 8 million different things, ironing or something else, and the Image Awards were on. Tyler Perry was getting the Chairman's Award, and he said something that stopped me in my tracks and really made me reconsider my focus about my writing career. He said the following words, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He said, "Don't wait for somebody to greenlight your project. Create your own intersection." Don't wait for somebody to greenlight your project. Create your own intersection. And I couldn't believe how real this was. I did a lot of research for this book. I put my heart into this book. One of the most gut-wrenching experiences I had during the research process for this book was sitting at the back of a juvenile court in Watts, California, watching young girls appear before the judge who've been charged with soliciting prostitution. As a lawyer, it made no sense to me. And I'm talking about 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. If in our society you cannot vote, you cannot smoke, you cannot drink, you cannot drive because you are a child, you're not of the age of consent, how can you consent to have sex with a grown man? Right? Those children should not have been charged. In the state of Illinois, if you are under 18, you are considered a sexually exploited child. You are not charged. I am now involved in being an advocate for sexual regard in this area, and I've also formed an organization that you guys are going to hear more about. It's called BLAST, B-L-A-S-T.
Wild stuff with some boys, and he was on the news, and he said he was going to fight the accusations. He was going to take it to court, and he was going to fight, and he was going to prove that he was innocent of what he was being charged of, which was coercing these boys to have sex with them and all that other stuff. Anyway, he ended up settling out of court, which in my opinion proved that he was guilty. But in Atlanta, he has he has the biggest Baptist church in Atlanta. He started it from, I think, 3,000 members, and he has like 30, 40,000 now. Anyway, so I thought there was a lot of hypocrisy there. I thought there was a lot of wrongdoing there. I said this would make for an interesting fictional telling. And so I decided that I would work on developing a story. And wrote the first one, and then I wrote the second, and then I wrote the third. And there was a picture of him that he had taken in the bathroom of him wearing some biker shorts, a cell phone camera, selfies type stuff, right, selfie. And he sent to these boys, and it was all online. So I decided I was going to use that picture. Now, granted, I did hire a model, and we recreated, but I used that picture for my first book. And surprisingly, even though my friends were like, "Are you crazy? You know, people might come after you. Eddie Long's a big dude. He might catch you in an alley, whatever. You need to be concerned. Won't you get sued?" I didn't think any of that was going to happen. And surprisingly, not until about a year after the first book was published, 3 weeks ago, I come home, and I noticed there's like a sign on my front door. And it is white. It's white, and it's not like handwriting, but they're like block letters. Like, you know, like when you get that rant note. None of you have ever gotten a rant note. But someone took the time to cut out little letters and paste them on there. And I forgot to bring it, but I know you guys can't see it. But this is what it was. It was like a letter, and what it said was, and people don't know me by Marcus, but that's the name I go by, and it said, "Marcus, you, letter U, need to stop fucking with Pastor Eddie Long. And then underneath it, I thought it said "you're guy," but it says "you are G-A-Y." It says "you're gay anyway," which I thought was hilarious because I'm not gay. There was gasoline spilled on my front porch. There was dry dog food spilled across the front porch, and there were long stem flowers like. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I guess there was something. I guess they did not like the series. But
You got police?
you know, I put it on Facebook because I don't do enough marketing. I put it on Facebook. Started a conversation. People were like, "Oh my goodness, are you safe? Call the police." I didn't see a reason to call the police because there was no threat made. It was just somebody pissed off, and you know. And so I knew what it was. It was somebody like, you know, when you're kids, you ring the doorbell and run. It was kind of like that. So I was like, whatever. And I just let it, and nothing ever happened since then. Anyway, so there's a series, Bishop 1, Bishop 2, and I just published Bishop 3 in the beginning of this month. And it's more or less, that's the end of the series because he just kind of loses it and goes crazy. But I will read an excerpt from part 2. More or less what's happening is, in the first book, he was accused of molesting a girl, 14 years old. It turns out she was trying to bribe him. He did not touch her. His wife found out about it. They were trying to sue. And finally, after the father came out, snuck up on him at night and shot him, did the girl finally come forward and say, "I was just trying to extort some money from this dude." But in part 2, the real thing actually comes out, and this is an excerpt from when he tells his wife. Now, his wife had found out about the false accusations, and she believed everything was over until this happens.
As the page turns, thank you. I met with them they read Love in a Carry-On Bag, and they are, you know, they tell you. They don't just blow smoke, they tell you. So it was definitely a good meeting, and I'm looking forward to having them read more books as well as connecting with the rest of you book clubs here today. So thank you guys for being here. So my story is a little bit different. I actually started off in the publishing industry. I was a publicist. I worked for Scholastic. I worked on J.K. Rowling's books, the Harry Potter series. I worked with some children's authors, Walter Dean Myers, Ruby Bridges. I worked on a lot of books. I also worked for Penguin Putnam, where I worked on big authors like Catherine Coulter and Rebecca Walker, who's Alice Walker's daughter. B.B. Moore Campbell, you guys remember B.B. Moore Campbell? I was her publicist as well. So I actually got into publishing with the idea that I was going to learn all of the behind-the-scenes things, so that when I became an author, nobody could pull the wool over my eyes. I was going to be able to kind of walk into the publishing houses, demand what I want, get things going. I had a really big agent here in New York City, and one by one, the publishing houses told me no. I think I must have had at least 10 to 12 rejections for Love in a Carry-On Bag. And so I had worked on the book for over 10 years.
Turns for inviting me here. As she said, they've read all 3 of my books. They are one of the best book clubs that I know, and I appreciate them just supporting me. What's funny is I'm actually in a book club as well. I'm with Sugar and Spice Book Club. We are from Queens, New York, and they are actually what inspired me to begin writing. We were having a short story contest, and we had a couple authors in the house, and I read my short story. And when I read the short story, they said, you have to turn that short story into a book. And that's how Unstable was born. And Unstable is my first book, and I wrote a second book called 7 Again. And the first book, Unstable, was so well received, I actually followed up with a sequel, and that's my third book, Unstable 2. And there's talks now, my readers want another book, so I'm actually thinking about actually making Unstable a trilogy and following it up with a third book. Now, Unstable is unlike anything you've heard here tonight, so I'm going to warn you right now, it's very dark, it's twisted, And that's what I actually love to read. That's what I like to watch on TV. My 9 to 5, I'm actually a manager in the IT department. So I design applications and websites. So writing is like a complete opposite of what I do in my 9 to 5. And my husband always asks me, why do you like reading such dark, twisted stuff? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'll sit and I'll watch these movies about people being mutilated. I just like dark, twisted stuff. So that's what Unstable. If you're looking for something different to read, I don't even know how I would categorize it. It's suspenseful, it's a thriller. It definitely will take you there, and it's unlike anything you've read. I think it's out right now. And I don't like to categorize myself as writing any one particular genre. Like, I like to write women's lit. My second book is a women's lit book. And my fourth book that I'm working on right now would be kind of categorized as fiction. But Unstable is definitely dark. And I'm going to read a sequel, a little bit of the prologue from it now.